Week 10 is in the books, and to be blunt, this was not a fantastic week of football. The games on paper look close, but when you sit down and watch them, there were some stinkers. But there were undoubtedly two very good games played. We're going to talk about those first. Starting off, Commanders taking on the Steelers. Pittsburgh rolls into Washington, pulls off a win. Mike Williams' first game had that impact splash play with that 32-yard reception. And my opinion on the Steelers and Commanders does not really change off this game. I think these are two very good teams who can't quite crack that upper level of true greatness, the same level as the team like the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Lions, even though we saw they performed in Sunday Night Football. These are very good teams, make it to the divisional, might make it to their conference championship game, and you can still point out the weaknesses, but it's an encouraging sign you can go on the road and win if you're Pittsburgh. For the Commanders, not that worried about Jaden Daniels. He was missing B-Rob, which hurts the running game, and the Steelers defense put a lot of eyes on him. He was forced to throw the ball, get the ball out, try and do something over the top a little bit more than he has been asked to do in the past. Growing pain of being a rookie quarterback playing the best defense in football besides maybe the Chiefs. Nothing to be concerned about there. Good competitive game. Very encouraging for the Steelers. Gets them that number one spot in the AFC North and gives them a firm grip on. All they have to do really is split a game with the Ravens somewhere down the stretch and they will win the North, which is something none of us saw coming going into the year. I don't think you did. I don't think you saw it coming going into this game. But all in all, pleasant game of football, to be sure.
Each time the Steelers win, they're establishing more and more that they are a very solid football team. They have a very good defense. You mentioned they may be the best defense in football. That is all true. But something I still feel very strongly about this Steelers team is that their ceiling is not incredibly high. They just have an extremely high floor because of their defense being as good as it is and the offense taking another step this season compared to last, where last season they had Kenny Pickett throwing passes for him. When you look at this game, I feel like the Commanders lost this game more than the Steelers won this game. Through 3 quarters, they scored 27 points. Jaden Daniels and that offense looked great. And then in the 4th quarter, they completely rolled over and the Steelers squeaked it out in the end. So that's where I think the Commanders, who have a very high ceiling with what Jaden Daniels is able to accomplish on the offensive side of the ball, faltered in the 4th quarter and they let the Steelers win the game. So that's why I think it's not super like the Steelers are here. They can beat the best version of the Ravens. They can beat the best version of the Chiefs. They can beat the best version of the Lions. I don't feel that way at all. And something before, I know you want to respond to that, something about this Commanders team that I think is a little concerning when they don't have Brian Robinson is they're not able to finish games and run the ball at a high level. Last week against the Giants, who have a bad run defense, 4.9 yards a carry. This week against the Steelers, 2.7 yards a carry, and they're not able to close out the game on the ground. So I think this Commanders team, when it comes to this season specifically, they may just not have enough talent when Brian Robinson isn't on the field.
I feel the con that, this Steelers team doesn't have as high a ceiling as the other top teams in the NFL is kind of stupid because, yes, they've got Russell Wilson, the quarterback. They don't have Lamar, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen. They don't have one of the truly elite generational quarterbacks. But at the same time, this defense is good enough to drag those opposing quarterbacks right down to the dirt with them. And when we look around the NFL, what team has played up to that supposed ceiling this year? The Chiefs have never done it. The Ravens have never done it. They've had some very good offensive games, but their defense is always getting lit up. The Lions, they're way too inconsistent. The Bills, same, very inconsistent. So the hypothetical ceiling of these teams doesn't move me. And these teams don't always put it together in the playoffs. The playoffs are not a guarantee of the best possible play of this team. In fact, the playoffs favor the Steelers because the defense historically in all of football plays better in the postseason. That's just a rule of thumb. Things get colder, slows down. The defense is much more important. So I wouldn't put the Steelers as a Super Bowl contender, but they're the top team in the AFC North for a reason. They've got the record they do for a reason. To try to dismiss them and say, they're not that good, their ceiling isn't that high. Their ceiling is a conference championship game, maybe even a Super Bowl appearance if things break their way. You can't tell me you don't see this team rolling into Baltimore and maybe just locking down this Ravens offense in a way they haven't all year. They've got the best run defense in the NFL, arguably behind maybe the Lions. You can't tell it's not possible.
The Ravens have the best run defense in the NFL.
I would argue it's the Lions or the Steelers. Certainly today, it was the Steelers. You saw they handled Eckler and Jaden Daniels. You can't tell me, though, this pumpkin Chiefs offense couldn't get shut down by the Steelers defense and Russ can squeak a few balls down the sideline to George Pickens or Mike Williams. Like, it's not beyond the realm of belief to say this team could come out of the AFC.
No, I don't say it's out of the realm. I don't think that's impossible. But when I'm saying they don't have as high a ceiling, if the best version of the Chiefs team shows up, this Steelers team is not beating them. If the best version of the Ravens, which have the best offense ever of all time during the regular season this year, shows up, they're not beating the Ravens. But I would agree with you that the Ravens, certainly with what their pass defense looks like, can lose to the Steelers team, and they can beat these elite teams. But if the best version of those teams show up, I think
so if something which hasn't happened all year happens, then the Steelers are in trouble. Got it. Also worth noting, Russell Wilson played
We've seen a very good Ravens team all year long on the offensive side of the
ball.
On
the offensive side of the ball, exactly.
And they faltered a few times. 3 games they lost.
On the offensive side of the ball. That's the thing. That's the issue. The defense hasn't put together when the offense has been clicking. Maybe you want to say the Bills, but that's a lot more Josh Allen self-sabotaging than the Ravens playing a great game of football. Russell Wilson played very well this game. I think he was averaging 14 yards of completion. Just ridiculous stuff from a quarterback we all thought was washed. Clearly, that deep threat, the long balls there, hitting Freiermuth like he did for that touchdown. Good timing, something you don't think Justin Fields can do. That George Pickens touchdown, he knows his players. He has faith in his guys to go up there and win those contested catches. And when you've got one of the 2 best contested catch receivers in all of football, I understand why he does. Steelers offense could be a little scary.
Another reason, I don't think this is a big win for the Steelers. Yes, they scored 27 points, and I feel like the Commanders more lost the game than anything, is Russell Wilson only completed 50% of those passes, and we keep applauding the run game, but they only averaged 3.3 yards a carry.
I hadn't said a word about the Steelers' run game today. It wasn't that good.
No, I know, but I'm saying, I've seen people, I'm not even saying this specifically you, so I've seen what people are saying in general about this Steelers performance. It's not like this offense was crazy dominant, and they have, as much as the defense can shut down some of these great offenses, I think there's a lot of potential for this offense to put up some duds.
It's ridiculous.
What if those deep passes down the sideline to Mike Williams or George Pickens go the other way? All of a sudden, they're not sniffing 27 points.
What if something which doesn't happen happens? I have a lot of faith in Russ, George Pickens, and Mike Williams to make those plays happen down the sideline. It's what they're good at. To say, oh, what if it's not? I mean, it's pointless. They're going to keep making these plays down the sideline. We don't need to drone on about the land of hypotheticals. Hypothetically speaking, any team in the NFL could win out and make the playoffs. It's not over for anybody yet. Maybe over for your favorite team very shortly. We'll get to them later in the video. Just to keep things moving, let's move it on to the Thursday night game. Talk a little bit about the Ravens taking on the Bengals. And nothing new was shown about this game. It felt a lot like their first matchup. Lamar sensational, Joe Burrow sensational. Jamar Chase is taking that firm claim as the second best wide receiver in all of football. High-level offensive play paired with a defense besides Battle, who in that Bengals secondary can make a play? Nobody. Besides Hendrickson off the edge in the pass rush, who in that front 7, that defensive line can make a play? Nobody. It's a pathetic unit for the Bengals. It's why they're 4-6. And as for the Ravens, if you give up 34 points, you should lose the game. Point blank, period. They cannot keep getting away with this, and eventually their offense will falter and their defense will continue to play at their level of mediocrity to below that. The only thing you can say about the Ravens is they've got some big names. Van Noy, Roquan Smith, Hamilton. Is he out for the year? What's the deal?
No, it's a sprained ankle.
Sprained ankle. He will eventually be back. You have a little more faith.
But heading into a Steelers game, that's concerning.
You have a little bit more faith that down the stretch, maybe one of these guys can have a big splash play which changes the game. But still, just a pathetic unit so far this year. Which sounds like I'm detracting a lot from these teams. I'm not. The Ravens are one of the 2 best teams in football, and the Bengals would be in the playoffs if they did not falter so much early. But here we are.
You look at this Ravens team, the offense, I mentioned already when we were talking about the Steelers, the Ravens offense is historic. What Lamar Jackson is accomplishing, what he's on pace to accomplish statistically, what Derrick Henry is doing in the run game for this Ravens offense. They have weapons all over the field that are catching, Nelson Aguilar's catching passes, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews finally getting involved in that offense. Isaiah Likely, he's a very good tight end, probably would start at tight end for a lot of other teams, although he's on the field a lot, so he's sort of a starter.
He's a starter.
It's 1A and 1B.
They run a lot of 12 with Derrick Henry and Andrews and Likely.
That's not the biggest thing about this team as we look towards the playoffs. We look at teams in the past that have had these elite offenses, record-breaking offenses. If this Ravens team does not figure something out defensively, it is malpractice. They didn't do anything at the trade deadline to try and improve this pass rush, to try and improve the secondary, because getting lit up for 260 yards by Joe Burrow and the Jamar Chase connection, that is not a good look. You cannot let that happen in the playoffs. And it feels a lot like the Broncos in 2013 when their offense broke every single record. And then in the playoffs, they met the Legion of Boom, who are competent on the offensive side of the ball and then had the best defense in the NFL.
That's a false equivalency because that game was over after the first snap. Let's be honest with ourselves. That ball going over Peyton's head doomed that team to failure. Like, it's not, you're comparing apples to oranges in that.
In that comparison, the Broncos defense was below average during the regular season. It wasn't great, and they had an elite offense. And I think this Ravens team is kind of along that same path where they have one of the greatest offenses ever, and they have a good run defense. But if they meet Patrick Mahomes,
I mean, if they have every single break go against them like that Broncos team did in the Super Bowl, yeah, any team's going to lose in that situation. I get what you're saying, but to point to that specific example, when everything that happened to the Broncos that year in the Super Bowl happened to them, I don't know.
And it's not exactly as good of a comparison in my opinion. The Dolphins offense, when they had over 400 yards a game, defense wasn't all that great, and then they get destroyed in the playoffs. So this defense needs to improve somewhere, and Kyle Hamilton's injury doesn't help anything.
Yeah, the Kyle Hamilton injury is not as major as I thought it was going to be when I saw it happen on the field. I was hearing a little bit of buzz that it may have been an Achilles. I'm glad it's just an ankle sprain, but at the same time, what's really changing by him being out of the line? They can't really go from being the worst defense in football to being the worst defense in football. They're there.
And obviously, there's a lot of football still left to be played.
And not that much.
For all the teams before we get to the playoffs. But if the Ravens were to play the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the playoffs, or they were to play the Bills, I think those two teams would probably still be favored against the Ravens because of how bad their defense has been.
I have a hard time looking at how the Bills game went earlier in the year or looking at how the Chiefs game went earlier in the year. Maybe the Chiefs are favored, but I have a hard time saying the Ravens wouldn't be favored in those games just by virtue of how much better the Ravens offense has gotten since week 1. But, I mean, do we really need to dwell on the Bengals? They're pretty much done.
The only thing I'd say about the Bengals is they're a worse version of the Ravens. Elite passing attack, not really much of a run game, and a bad defense all around. So
yeah, it's really just the Ravens without a running game at all. Like, Joe Burrow's no Lamar Jackson. Whoever is taking carries for them now, I know Brown got injured, is no Derrick Henry.
Chase Brown didn't get hurt.
Yes, he did. May have come back into the game, but he was hurt that game. Gotta watch the tape, big fella. Gotta watch the tape. But speaking of someone who doesn't watch the tape, Caleb Williams scored 3 points against the Patriots defense, which had been giving up close to 30 a game over the past month. Before I get into everything I want to say of Chicago, it's important to highlight Drake Maye looked really good at points over this game. Obviously, he had a few of the throws, particularly that interception where he was clearly just trying to force it over a guy or look him off the ball. You would like back. He was finding his guys open deep over the middle. He was hitting guys along the sideline. He was keeping the offense on schedule at points against a very good Chicago Bears defense. Say what you want about Eberflus's head coaching ability. He can run a defense, particularly one as talented as this one. So May has looked a little bit better than I think we were expecting. He was supposed to be of Daniels, Williams, and himself. He was supposed to be the developmental guy. He was going to need more time. They got Jacoby Brissett to stand in front of him so he can absorb, learn from the bench, and not be thrown into this horrible Patriots offensive system. Working out better for him than we anticipated. Anything you would like to say about Drake Maye and the Patriots?
Well, I think the Bears' offensive system is probably worse than the Patriots' offensive system. Talent and system are two different things.
I would argue the Patriots have a pretty bad system, too. You were not watching what they were trying to do with Jacoby, what they've done with Drake earlier in the year. It's not special over there either.
I didn't say it was. But I'm just saying, I think I saw your TikToks. I'm also going off some of the commentary.
You want to talk about TikToks? There's a reason we got, that video has 82,000 views and 800 comments because not only were you smug and condescending about how the Commanders were going to easily beat the Steelers, but you've refused to step down in the comment section with your fellow man and own up to your mistake. Let's not talk about TikToks.
But the Patriots specifically, I think Drake Maye has been very impressive this season with not much talent around him. He's made some big-time throws. He's able to push the ball down the field. He's hitting checkdowns. So from a Drake Maye perspective, I think he's been very good. Do you want me to go first?
No, I'll go first. Okay. I'll ask you a follow-up question because I think I have the answer to this. What pieces on that Patriots offense do you see being there long-term? Maybe Ramondre Stevenson. That's it.
Ramondre Stevenson, maybe one of the guards.
Exterior line playing that good. Time to talk about Caleb Williams because heads are going to roll eventually in Chicago. As of recording this video right now, and we could turn back on our Wi-Fi on our cell phones after we're done and hear the news that Waldron's been fired, and it wouldn't shock us one bit. Same with Eberflus. People are going to lose their jobs this year. We have gone from a Bears team which was set to make the wild card, maybe even compete for the NFC North, the best division in football, to them losing 3 straight off a bye week with increasingly pathetic offensive performances, with a locker room which appears to have given up, and most importantly for the long-term future of the Bears, a quarterback who looks like he is in over his head. The reason I talked about Maye as compared to Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, Daniels was supposed to have the biggest leg up due to his experience, but Caleb Williams was supposed to be able to step into an NFL system, particularly with what is around him talent-wise, and look like a legitimate quarterback. There were talks of him being the first Chicago Bears quarterback to ever break 4,000 passing yards as a rookie. Those are not figments of my imagination. I have heard the Bears faithful talk. He's not that guy at this point. I don't think it's a career-ending thing to say about him. I think he's got plenty of athletic ability and room to improve, but the faults he had in college are still here. He holds onto the ball way too long. Got sacked 9 times. 5 of those were his fault. 5 of those were him either stepping out of a clean pocket into coverage or him just holding it way too long. Fun fact, Drake Maye had less time to throw this week than Caleb Williams up until the fourth quarter where they really started dialing it up. He is not taking any risk downfield. When he throws a deep ball, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be an overthrow. I would be okay if he had a few interceptions this game because that shows me he's at least trying to get the ball out and force it to his receivers. He's just not doing that. Part of that is certainly on the receivers getting pressed at the line of scrimmage and not doing all that much, but it's just such an uninspiring piece of play from that position. You've got to wonder how much of this can be fixed by simply getting a new coach and a new culture in there. And if it can't be, oh man, did the Bears do it again? And have they ruined yet another young, promising quarterback? A man can hope.
I want this to be clear. I'm not going to sit here and say Caleb Williams has had a good rookie season or that any performance he's had outside of a couple games have been good. There has been a lot of bad and makes you really question what Caleb Williams is going to look as an NFL quarterback for the rest of his career. I think that is all true. There's throws he misses in the Patriots game where you're like, how do you miss that throw? There's decisions you make where you're left questioning. But I think the biggest part of this Bears offense and what has been a disaster, Eberflus getting Coach of the Year projections before the season started, is this is an organizational and coaching just malpractice and disaster. The biggest thing that I felt about this Bears team from a play calling perspective is they don't use their weapons all that right or use them to their best skill sets. And I saw an article about this when it comes to Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. Keenan Allen has the highest average depth at target of his career. They've tried to turn him into a deep threat at 32 years old. I think that's a mistake. They don't push the ball down the field to DJ Moore or take shot plays when he proved last season that he has the ability to be a top 10 receiver in the NFL. Whatever's going on with Rome Odunze, he's been solid in spots, and nothing that they...
Not going to talk about Cole Kmet not getting used at all. Our pal Miller Football's very upset about that.
The way they use Cole Kmet, nothing about how the offense runs and the way they use their various weapons makes much sense, and a lot of that blame, I think, goes on Shane Waldron, and it goes on Matt Eberflus. And when you have an offense that doesn't make much sense from the way it's operating and the play calling, and then you have a quarterback who is struggling significantly with rookie mistakes and getting adjusted to the NFL and not learning from mistakes he made in college, that is going to lead to very poor offensive play. And I think it is 2 major problems colliding that can only be fixed by getting a better offensive mind in there.
I will push back on one thing you said there. They're having DJ Moore run go balls. He's just not getting the ball thrown to him accurately. There were a ton of plays against the Patriots. He was headed downfield in single coverage. And maybe part of that is Christian Gonzalez being one of the best man corners in football. But still, the shots are just not being taken. He's not being given the opportunity to go win balls. And maybe that's because of some locker room issue. Maybe it's because Williams doesn't have faith or chemistry with him. I don't know what the deal is. The answer for Chicago, and this is not me advocating for Williams to get benched, and I know what I just said has been very negative about him, he kind of has to keep playing. You have to flip the organization because this is the #1 overall pick. This is the worst trade in history, supposedly, which wound up with him being on your team. You have to try and curtail it around him to make it better for him. Because if he doesn't work, you've wasted 5 years.
Well, the thing that really doesn't make sense is you'd think they spoke about Keenan Allen being a safety blanket or someone that Caleb Williams can rely on due to his veteran presence, his route running ability, and just the fact his average depth of target, I'm pretty sure, is higher than DJ Moore's. It doesn't make much sense. You'd think he'd be operating more from the slot. They're using.
I think the average depth of target stat does not exactly tell you everything you need to know about that, because at the same time, what's the average depth of the route they're running? What types of routes are they running? Is Keenan Allen getting disproportionately targeted when he runs that go ball or that corner or that post? I think he is. I've been seeing him get a lot of overthrows his direction, a lot more than I've seen DJ Moore get overthrown. Like, it's hard to just look at that stat and say, oh, they're misusing Keenan Allen. I don't think they're using Keenan Allen well, but to say that it's because of that, I don't know.
I don't think they're putting their very talented players in the best position for each of them to succeed, despite all of the struggles that Caleb Williams is going through. And something that I think needs to be reevaluated using 2020 hindsight vision is that you mentioned heading into the best situation ever for a quarterback to go into. And I kind of am starting to feel like that wasn't true and was poor evaluation for myself and others that felt that way. Because we look at the two rookie quarterbacks that have lit the world on fire over the previous 2 seasons.
If you're about to say, okay, over the previous 2 seasons, I was going to say there's not a second one this year. I thought you were going to go Bo Nix for a second.
CJ Stroud last year had an offensive coordinator that was getting serious consideration for head coaching jobs, and he decided to stay with the Texans.
Has not worked out.
Exactly, has not worked out, but very good offensive coordinator, what they were able to accomplish. And then this year with Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury may not be all that great of a head coach and failed with the Cardinals there, but he clearly knows what he's doing from an offensive play calling perspective. So the two rookie quarterbacks that have been highly successful have had very good offensive coordinators. And then we look at some of the rookies that have been a little bit more successful, or a lot bit more successful than Caleb Williams this season.
Been. He's been the worst besides Rattler.
Bo Nix has Sean Payton, one of the greatest offensive minds in the NFL history. And then you have...
Yeah, tell me about what Drake Maye has.
Well, Drake Maye's a different story.
Drake Maye's just better than Caleb Williams right now.
From what we've seen.
Yeah, from the eye test, from whatever you want to say. At the end of the day, they're going to flip the organization. They are probably going to go after someone like Ben Johnson in the offseason. Although, who isn't going after Ben Johnson, who's got a head coaching vacancy? I think he's more likely to go with it's the unique situation.
Maybe the Giants head coach.
No. Now, maybe if he gets his own rookie quarterback and they get that first overall pick. The unique situation Ben Johnson is in, and we'll get to the Lions right after I get done musing about this. The two jobs which on paper look like the most attractive are the Cowboys and the Bears. But at the same time, and we're assuming, of course, the Jerry Jones decides to fire Mike, but I don't think a head coaching candidate wants to deal with an injury-prone Dak Prescott and an incompetent owner, and I don't think he wants to try and completely rebuild a team with a weak offensive line with a question mark at the quarterback position in Caleb Williams, and which has historically been incompetently run. So where Ben Johnson will go, who knows? But he undoubtedly should be getting a head coaching job because the Detroit Lions scored 26 points and beat the Houston Texans while Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. I think it's the first time since 2012 a quarterback with 5 picks has won a game. Phenomenal stuff from everybody besides Goff. Lions defense locked in. Even though Zadarius Smith was not playing, their pass rush looked better. Secondary, big plays on CJ Stroud to force those turnovers, get the Lions the ball back. And the running game, even though it was not particularly consistent, when it leaked out of the backfield, when it got screens thrown to Gibbs, Montgomery, they were effective. So this win for the Lions, and I'm going to parrot this for the Vikings when we talk about them in a second. If you are capable of sustaining a terrible, terrible quarterback performance and then beating the opposing team, who is an NFL team, one of the 32 best on the planet, with a liability throwing the ball for you, you are a pretty good team. Lions obviously a great team. Goff going pumpkin mode one game does not change my opinion of him, but man, this is an encouraging win for Detroit.
I think it was a great win because we saw some offensive struggles finally from Jared Goff, and then we saw their ability to hang in the game and win it late. Now, if they have this type of performance from Jared Goff against...
against a team playing competent football, they lose. But at the same time, what team can't you say that about?
Yeah, but the ability just to come back, hang in after interception, poor play, and still win that game, I think it is a great win for them. You would hope the defense with Zadarius Smith back is going to get even better. And I think we've seen the defense, despite the Aiden Hutchinson injury, still play very well. So if you're a Lions fan, even with all the bad that happened in that game, I think you're left highly encouraged.
Well, highly encouraged is a stretch because you already thought you were this good, but it's a good win. Looking over at the Texans, they're really thankful they play in the AFC South and two teams in that division aren't competing and another one starting Joe Flacco at quarterback because this is not a good team, particularly with how injured they are. Their O-line is a complete mess, got worse with Tunsil going down. Even if he is reinserted into the lineup, you can tell he's a little bit shaky. Gotta let me finish my sentences there, man. That is not a particularly competent unit. It is precludative of you competing for the AFC because you're eventually going to run into a pass rush like the Chiefs who just feast upon you in the playoffs, like the Steelers, who just destroys you in the postseason setting and just stops your offense entirely because they can't pass block. Will they be better when they get Nico Collins back? You would have to hope. Nico Collins was on pace to have the best season of a wide receiver this year before he went down. If he's able to replicate that, the Texans offense certainly gets better. They start cracking 30 again. They keep things on schedule. They give Joe Mixon a little bit more room to breathe, although it's hard to breathe against this Lions front seven in the run game. They're one of the best in football at that. But man, this is a disappointment feels like the right word for the Houston Texans this year. Part of it's their fault, part of it's not. I know you're going to say health, but it's still disappointing.
The season has been disappointing. Even early in the season when Nico Collins was going on that tear, the offense wasn't as good as you expected it to be when they added Stephon Diggs prior to the season starting. But when it comes to this game, the first half was very encouraging. What they were able to do, they were spreading the ball out to a bunch of their different weapons. They weren't over-reliant on Joe Mixon or Tank Dell to be the entire offense. John Mechie made some plays. Dalton Schultz made a play here and there. So I think that was very encouraging. The second half,
They got the ball given to him 3 times by Goff in the first half.
Which I also think was encouraging from a defensive perspective that the Texans were able to force some of those turnovers. The Texans' pass rush was very good, although some of that, Dan Skipper starting at left tackle.
Well, he's a wide receiver, so I mean, why would you expect him to be able to block Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter?
But this is one of it sounds weird because they lost, but one of the better performances from this Texans team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're insane.
Now, I don't think...
It's so much easier to just look at what happened that game and say, oh, Jared Goff was throwing the ball terribly. You can't go back and look at those interceptions and for 4 of them say, oh, look at this amazing play the defense made. It's just Goff's throwing it to him. He's throwing to open defenders. How is this encouraging to you?
The defensive line was making some plays. It's more just so from an offensive perspective that if you get Nico Collins back and he's in the offense next to Tank Dell and the way they're actually finally starting to spread the ball around and how successful Joe Mixon was in that game, you could see things maybe click a little bit. But like you said, offensive line, what are they on pace to give up, 60 sacks, something crazy like that?
I think you're smoking something if you're encouraged by this one way or
the other. I don't think, are they going to win a playoff game? Probably not.
Depends who they get to play. I mean, they're going to get to face a wild card team.
That's true.
Oh, man, they're going to be the 4 seed, aren't they? Because presumably whoever comes out of the North, they're going to be the 4 seed. They're screwed.
Well, the Chiefs will be the 1 seed. North will be the 2 seed.
No, the North might be the 3 seed. The Bills are only 2 losses.
Depending on what the Bills do, too, yeah.
But, yeah, they're going to be the 4 seed. And, God, who does that leave them playing as the 5 seed? The AFC's not that good this year.
They would play whoever's the 2 seed in the North, probably.
Yeah, that could be an issue. That's an issue when you're facing the Steelers pass rush or you're facing Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens team. It was nice talking to you, CJ Stroud. We're moving to being done for the year on you. Briefly touching on the Vikings, we're not going to dwell on this one too long. Sam Darnold turned into an absolute pumpkin, with the exception of him throwing 3 red zone interceptions, which is back-breaking. They played very well. Talk about feeling encouraged. I know it's the Jaguars, but winning a game when your quarterback refuses to score points in the NFL, it's something, man. You hang your hat on. 7-2 is 7-2.
What's the extent of Aaron Jones' injury?
Oh, he came back and played the final plays of the fourth quarter.
Okay.
I thought he popped a liver for a second. I was a little bit concerned. But look, if you can beat a bad team with quarterback play arguably worse than anything we have ever seen from Sam Darnold before, which is really saying something, you can beat most teams if he is on his game. Will he be able to get back on his game? I don't know. He's kind of been full pumpkin mode the past 3 weeks, getting his head ripped off by Byron, whatever his name is, did not do any favors for his brain. But here we are.
Just with the Vikings, I don't think the game's that encouraging just because the biggest question mark heading into the season was Sam Darnold. Now he's looked great for most of the season. The offense has looked phenomenal, but now we're starting to see some return to what we've seen.
It was also a rainy game in Florida on the road.
But some return to, early career Sam Darnold, and if they do that against, one of the better teams in the NFC, it's going to be a much different outcome.
Let's look at the schedule. I'm going to briefly bounce back to Chicago Bears. Their next game's against the Titans, which, Will Levis played a good game. And you're going to laugh at that. He got sacked 7 times. Unlike Caleb Williams, a lot of those weren't on him. Still had a decent completion percentage. Didn't make any back-breaking mistakes, which is a very encouraging sign for Will Levis. Threw 2 touchdowns against a very good Chargers defense. But they play the Titans next week. That's in Tennessee or at Tennessee, so it's going to be warm outside at least. And then they play the Bears the next week. And I'm sorry, but if you think Caleb Williams and that Bears offense is scoring a point on Brian Flores and that defense, besides anything but like a DeAndre Swift broken tackle, 50-yard touchdown, you are smoking something.
No, at this point, I'm thinking more of what the Vikings can accomplish in the playoffs than I am, beating up on poor little Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus.
And finally, to stick the final nail in the coffin before we move on to your favorite team of the Chicago Bears, the rest of their schedule is the NFC North, 6 games of it, all their division games, the Seahawks and the 49ers. Maybe one of those teams doesn't make the playoffs. Seahawks are probably not making the playoffs, but 7 of their last 8 games are right now going to be against playoff teams. I don't think the 49ers are in it right now technically, but I'm kind of encouraged from what I saw.
You want to talk about the 49ers?
Not really. I want to talk about the Giants. I want to let you talk about the Giants.
I don't have much to say.
You don't have much to say? You don't have anything to say?
I mean, outside of the fact that
dropped off at the Hague, Dable getting fired. I mean, what do you want to talk about?
I mean, they're bad. They're pathetic. And nothing. Daniel Jones, horrible performance. Run defense is horrible. Good pass rush, fine. They got to Bryce Young a little bit, but then you have Chuba Hubbard running the ball down their throat. And you have Tyrone Tracy, who was the best player on the field for the Giants that game. And then
Evan Neal, respect Evan Neal. You saw that PFF grade.
Evan
Neal did fumble the game away.
Had a good game. Respect to him.
I think he had the best game of any offensive lineman this week, according to PFF, which PFF is whatever you want.
He's fresh, he's healthy, hasn't played all season. He was ready to go, man.
We call Daniel Jones Hitler a lot. Maybe Evan Neal's the true German superstar. Evan Neal's the Aryan dream coming.
I don't know, but again, good for the Panthers. They got a win, got the 3 wins. The Giants get closer to the number 1 overall pick. I don't know. What do you want me to say?
I'll talk a little bit about the Panthers. Bryce Young continues to play better week to week. He had a few drops this week. He had a few balls which weren't thrown that well, but against a fairly competent pass rush, a passing defense which was only giving up 180 yards a game, he stood up to it. He did as well as we've seen him do throughout the course of his career. If guys like Xavier Legette could catch a ball which hits them in the chest without drastically slowing down and altering their route, I think this offense could be really special. But what do you mean really special?
Really special?
Look, I do not need the guy hyping up Tyrone Tracy to try and laugh at me. If Bryce Young can get his timings down and the receivers can play up to their athletic potential, they'll be set. I'm talking about Xavier Legette for a little bit. I know we're deep into the podcast and we're doing this. What was the narrative coming out around him about college? Like, he was going to be a good route runner with consistent hands, but he was somewhat unrefined athletically. And the Combine boosted that up a little bit, but apparently he flipped all his attributes around because right now he's getting a ton of separation. Very good when he gets the ball in his hands in space, but he cannot catch to save his life, and his route running looks worse.
I don't think that was the narrative. Was more like, what are you going to get from him? Because he only had 1 year of high-level production in college.
I don't know. I think if you were looking at his weaknesses, you would have highlighted some physical stuff, some getting the ball and doing things with it in space. Now he just can't get the ball, period. But Coker played well. Chuba Hubbard played well. Jatavian Sanders, great wide-open catch for a touchdown in the end zone. I am pleasantly encouraged from what I'm seeing from the Panthers. Their schedule, they go on bye and they play the Chiefs the week after, which... You want to talk about the funniest possible outcome? The Chiefs heroically slay the Bills, their arch nemesis, just beat up on them at Arrowhead, and then the Panthers come and beat them out of the pot. Undefeated no more.
You said the Chiefs have the potential really special. I think they have the potential to have an average offense. Really special is stretching it.
I mean,
because they have a really good run game.
Yeah, again, they're an average offense right now, at least the past 2 weeks. Really special is like Bryce Young puts it together. But you're a hater, I understand. You're intimidated by Bryce Young,
Okay.
a taller man than you, both
No, he's
spiritually and physically. I have sung the Cardinals' praises throughout the course of the year from a certain point. They run the ball very well. They defend the run very well. Their defense is getting better week to week. I've oftentimes compared that system to Flores' system his first year in Minnesota, where they don't quite have the talented pieces, but as they get more accustomed to the scheme, what they're running, get more continuity, they're pretty decent towards the end of the season, a top 10 defense by the end of the season. This could be a headache for somebody in the playoffs. A good running game who can defend the pass relatively well, and as Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride could beat somebody in the playoffs. So this could be a rough first-round matchup for the Packers or the Vikings, whoever that number one wildcard team is. I could see the Cardinals winning a playoff game from what I've seen from them ever since that little skid they went on to start the year. Not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. They benefit from playing in the NFC West this year, which is the worst division in the NFC right now. Well,
NFC
second.
South.
Yeah, the South is the South. The South's not getting to playoff teams.
Injuries have hampered the Buccaneers and the Falcons.
The Falcons
they leave
just
some
lost
to be
to the
desired.
Saints.
Yeah.
They lost to the Rizzler. I mean, we don't need to get...
Well, Young Hoku missed 3 field goals.
Yeah,
so
maybe you fall back on that, but I mean, if we're going to talk about missed field goals, the 49ers should have blown
Either
out
way,
the Buccaneers.
NFC South, not a special division.
It could be worse. It could be worse, but it could have the Giants in it.
This Cardinals team, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I was high on them with some of the performances they put up, even in losses. Then I kind of hopped off of their bandwagon, but I'm fully back on it now that I've seen
So they're going to start losing again.
Yeah. Don't blame it on me. But with how they're starting to use Trey McBride, use Marvin Harrison Jr., using them to play off of each other, I think there was a point in this game where Kyler Murray, it was an absurd amount of completions he was able to get in a row. I want to say it was 16, but I do not have that written down. I do not remember. But Kyler Murray adding a dynamic threat on the ground. They have 3 running backs that rotate through their backfield that have all been productive for them. James Conner, Trey Benson. Oh, what's the third one? One that had the 56-yard touchdown the week prior.
The dude with the Italian name. Could not tell you off the top of my head.
I don't think it's Italian, but...
We're casual. You keep talking, I'll look it up.
DiMercato.
DiMercato sounds Italian. You don't think DiMercato's Italian?
You can look up if he's Italian. The Cardinals, you're encouraged by them. I think they're going to win the NFC West unless the Rams make a real push. The 49ers, I don't think really compete with them for the division title. The Seahawks, I kind of think they're completely falling off. A lot of that is due to injuries. Some of that's due to Geno Smith and poor offensive line play, but highly encouraged by the Cardinals. On the Jet side of things...
Argentinian and Spanish, by the way.
So not Italian.
Not Italian, but European, so same neighborhood.
Okay. On the Jet side of things, this is just going to go down as the worst midseason firing of a head coach, I think, in NFL history. They clearly were still trying to compete when they demoted their offensive coordinator and traded draft capital to bring in an old Devontae Adams. I mean, the defense went from a borderline top 10 defense with Robert Saleh still in the building to now giving up an average of close to 26 points per game on the defensive side of the ball. Their star players on defense now have become bad players on defense. Sauce Gardner was getting cooked against the Cardinals. Their front seven not doing all that much. I mentioned how many completions Kyler Murray had in a row. So I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to retire after this season or not. Maybe he'll stay in the building. Maybe it's all a conspiracy because Woody Johnson, owns Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and Aaron Rodgers wants the Jets to be bad.
Or it could be he's punishing Rodgers for going up against Big Pharma. Either way, a likely outcome to be sure. Saying this about the Jets, their remaining schedule is the Colts, Seahawks, Dolphins, Jaguars, Rams, Bills, and Jets. The Rams are far enough down the line, I could see them being banged up again. The really only game which looks unwinnable out of that bunch is the Bills at Buffalo late in the year. But if they have...
The Jets?
Yeah,
They're not beating anyone.
It's the Colts, Seahawks, Dolphins, and Jaguars, man. If they crank off 4 in a row, I won't be shocked because of how bad the teams they're playing are.
We are 10 weeks into the season, and they have 1 more win than the Giants.
Yeah, I know, but they still have 1 more win than the Giants. These are not good teams. It's the Seahawks on the road. It's the Dolphins in Miami in a warm weather environment for old man Rodgers. He's going to retire soon. He's going to be in Florida anyway. Same for the Jaguars. Like, their next 4 games are cupcakes. They play the Rams, who it's impossible to tell what state they're going to be in by that point, and then they got to play the Bills. I could see them stringing 4 together. After that, it is hard to say.
I don't think.
Do I think it's going to happen? No, but the season is not over yet. We're getting close. We are real close. We are 1 loss away, but 9 wins probably get you the 7th seed in the AFC this year.
You want to talk about the 49ers?
I mean, not particularly. They won. They should have not blown out. They should have comfortably beat the Buccaneers. Deebo Samuel's a bitch. Where do I go off from that?
Well, they're coming off of a bye. Their offense, Brock Purdy throws for 350 yards, 2 touchdowns. They are very capable of moving the ball, but the fact they even attempted 6 field goals just shows they're still not putting the ball in the end zone. And then they're having Jake Moody, who clearly wasn't ready to come back and kick field goals for him, missed 3 field goals. So I think it's concerning that this 49ers team, after a bye against a very injured Buccaneers team, is still not putting the ball in the end zone consistently.
A very injured Buccaneers team, you could argue the 49ers are more injured. Like, it's not, you can't say, oh, well, this healthy, crisp 49ers team just showed up and rolled over for our pals, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, this is a hurt 49ers team, too. I don't get why we're bringing up the Bucs injuries.
Well, the Buccaneers injuries the 49ers had Christian McCaffrey on the field. They have Deebo Samuel on the field. George Kittle was playing. So they have a lot of their star talent on offense. And the Buccaneers, they lost their 2 best receivers. Don't really have any receivers besides the guy. I mean, they have Sterling Shepard, who, praise Sterling Shepard for the good he did for the Giants.
What good did he do for the Giants?
But in 2020, they have a 2024 version of Sterling Shepard and Cade Otton, and their 2 running backs.
There's no good version of Sterling Shepard. Saying a 2024.
When he wasn't hurt, he was good. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Then stop bringing up Sterling Shepard.
I'm bringing him up as a point that they don't have any receivers, and they have a receiver from Furman.
Actually, they have a converted tight end from Furman. Respect Ryan. Shit like this.
Respect Ryan Miller, but what did Sterling Shepard do?
Shit like this from you is why we don't have anyone on our program anymore. It's why we don't get to bring guests on, because you sitting here in your folding lawn chair talking down about NFL players. Have some decency, man.
You don't talk about.
As for the 49ers, the encouraging part of this is they should have handily beat the Buccaneers if not for Moody being injured. I don't know if they cut him or not. They used the 3rd round draft pick on him. He has been generally good outside of today and getting injured. So I don't know what his leash looks like. He's a kicker, so not that long. He's fighting Deebo Samuel, so not that long. But you look at some of the receptions, the yards after catch drastically went up. I think that's because defenses are now having to walk more people down, have their best tackling safeties put eyes on Christian McCaffrey. Their real open field tacklers are being used to contain him, which makes everything a lot easier for guys like Deebo, like Kittle. Whoever gets the ball in their hands is dealing with a little bit less opposition, which when you're a high-level, talented Pro Bowl, all-pro level guy, you can do something with. So CMC clearly made their offense better, even though the point total didn't really reflect that. Jake Moody hits the game winner, so you've got to appreciate that a little bit. Baker Mayfield stiff arms the hell out of Nick Bosa. Like I was telling people, if Trump wins, Nick Bosa is going to be very subdued against the Buccaneers. He had 1 sack, but against Baker Mayfield, that is a poor performance for him. He hates Baker Mayfield, and he was still effortlessly shoved off while Mayfield saved the Buccaneers game, only to go on and lose it a few plays later. But I'm okay with the 49ers. I could see them being the Cardinals if they played again. I could see them beating the Rams. The NFC West isn't good, so they could still definitely win that division.
They could still beat those teams. I just don't think it's going to happen because you would have hoped off of a bye, the red zone offense issues and the problems they've been having would have looked a little bit better against a very injured Buccaneers team.
I think you're just being a little bit of a hater, man. I'll be honest. But we
are
allowed to be haters.
That has been our reactions for this week. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe, use code Thicc with 2 C's on Underdog. Gets you bonus cash up to $1,000, and we'll see you in the next one.